The more visibility that you gain in your life allows you to have a higher probability of achieving the things that you're working towards. The challenge is that with more visibility comes more stress. So, what do we do if we want to create more visibility to be able to see more? And then also, how do we navigate stress? Well, this video is going to break down 3 steps to gaining more visibility while also being able to regulate, endure, and adapt to the environments that come with stress. So that way you have a higher chance of achieving the things you want, because we know people with more visibility have a higher probability of winning in all domains of life. Now, before we get into today's video, I want to welcome you if you're new to this channel. My name is Josh Perry. I'm a high performance coach working with executives, small business owners, leaders, and teams. I help them navigate the stress of change, the resistance to change, so that way they can have a larger impact in the areas of their life that matter most to them by working on their personal performance, aka the way they show up and participate in those areas of life, because we know the level in which you participate generates the results. If you want to get different results, you have to start with changing yourself from the inside out. So that's what I love to do. And it all started in my journey as a professional freestyle BMX athlete. I turned pro my junior year of high school, and I competed at a professional level for about 15 years. Throughout 10 of those years, I successfully battled multiple brain tumors, surgeries, radiation treatments, along with surgeries from other injuries that I endured. And it all taught me that if I wanted to change my reality, I had to take ownership of where I was and apply what I was learning into the next steps I was going to take to get to a place I wanted to be. And I had to focus on what that thing was. And it all started with taking ownership. So that's what I love to do. And it comes from my application experience. It's not just theory. I apply theory with application, tactful or tactical application to bridge the gap between intentions and executing on those intentions. So that way we can experience what we want, not just talk about it, dream about it, and hope for it. So getting into today's 3 steps to gaining more visibility revolve around understanding consciousness, stress, and emotions. So the thing about consciousness is we process 11 trillion bits of information every second. That's a ton of data. That's a ton of information. We do this through our senses. We're always perceiving things in the environment. So think about how many things you're unaware of that you're seeing, or the temperature of your skin, the clothing on your skin. Can you feel your feet on the ground? What about your taste, your sound? All these things come into how much information we process every single second. The average human, although, is only aware of about 50 bits of information every second. So think about that. That creates a huge gap in terms of information that's available to us in the outside environment and the internal environment that is our being. The reason why the brain does this is because if we were totally aware of everything, we would drop into what's called overwhelm. And I've learned to reframe overwhelm as a ton of information, new incoming information compared with old information that we're maybe becoming more conscious of. So the idea of consciousness is becoming more aware of ourselves, more aware of our environment, how we're perceiving and interacting with our environment, so on and so forth. So when we have more incoming information and why we're not aware of all the information available to us at a conscious level, it's because we drop into overwhelm. And when we get into overwhelm, we trigger stress. And with stress triggers cortisol. And within the first 7 minutes of cortisol, our brain decides to take a measure to fight or run away. So our IQ actually drops in the first 7 minutes. So we're not thinking logically, we're not thinking rationally. It's not a time to process information. It's a time to fight or run from the perceived threat in the environment. So you can think about all the situations and experiences you find yourself in your day-to-day and how much stress is being caused by these things. It's all internal. It's not about the thing, it's about how we're perceiving the environment. So within that process, we have a psychological process known as scotomas, aka blind spots. So when we're stressed, our brain narrows its focus to self-preservation, to fight back or to run away. So we're focused on self-preservation and escaping the danger, the threat, to get to a place of safety. Now, with blind spots and this narrowing of focus also comes mistakes and the sense of dysfunction and dis-ease in the body. We're not processing all the things. We're not in a total equilibrium state. We're not in a high performance state. This is a dysfunctional state that is focused on safety from the perceived threat. So you can think about an experience where you're about to give a presentation and this is something you want to do because it's part of your job or it's a part of your goals and it's got value to you. And then all of a sudden you notice like, oh man, all the thoughts come in, all the fears, your breath starts to shallow, your chest is breathing rather than your stomach, your heart rate is racing, you could feel the cortisol and adrenaline running through your body. And then this is also where self-sabotage comes in, because rather than going off of your preparation and your passion, you try to intellectualize what's going on, you try to avoid the emotions, and then you start doing things you normally wouldn't, or you run away. You let the fear, the stress take over, and you run away from the experience, the very opportunity you wanted. That's how this stress can harm us. It's about working with the stress, though. It's not about running from it. It's not about labeling it as bad or a threat, like a lot of society says, is like cortisol is bad. Chronic cortisol can be damaging, yes, but we need cortisol. Cortisol in acute manners is great. It allows us to wake up in the morning. It allows us to perform at a higher level. It's about the relationship we have with stressful events and cortisol as the chemical that is flowing through our bloodstream. So with the goal of creating awareness, we find ourselves in a paradox, because with more consciousness, more awareness creates more stress. So what do? That's where these 3 steps come in. The first step is creating a higher level of self-awareness, simply saying or noticing, I'm activated, I'm triggered, whatever the word is for you, is just knowing that your nervous system is in an activated state. Because when you can do this, you can couple the feelings of stress with ownership. Knowing where you are is more important than where you are. Think about that for a second. Knowing where you are is more important than where you are. So if you know you're in an activated state, you can work on regulating that. You can take ownership of what's going on and take ownership of, okay, maybe I'm perceiving the environment in a way that's maybe incongruent with how I want to experience the environment, or it's inconsistent with what's going on right now, which is a large part of how we operate from the past experiences. Our nervous system holds on to these events and categorizes them as similar to events that are happening now, but it's really not about what's happening now. It's about what that reminds us of from the past. So the first step is creating self-awareness. I'm activated. Just being able to sense what's going on, what you're feeling, what emotions are coupled with the feeling, what thoughts are paired with it, and then taking ownership of, okay, I'm activated. What can I do? How do I want to respond? How do I want to show up? Rather than reacting in a disempowered manner and giving other people and things our power, we take it back by saying, I'm activated right now. This is not good or bad. This is just knowing. That first step is awareness coupled with ownership, which leads to the second step of understanding and working with emotions rather than against them. So when there's stress, that's a blanket statement of a response from an underlying emotion, whether that be fear, sadness, shame, guilt, anger. Those are all a negative emotion that creates stress. It creates a stressful environment. So it's not about working against them. It's not about suppressing or avoiding. That's not what regulation is. Regulation is knowing I'm activated. Now we go into the body. What am I feeling? What's the emotion and what's the sensation in my body? And then we can go up into the brain and ask, what thoughts are attached here? What meaning am I placing on these feelings? What judgment am I placing on myself for having a human experience of feeling these things? The thing we have to understand about emotions is they're also filters of incoming information, just like beliefs are. And they filter how we're perceiving the environment and the information we're taking in and the meaning that we're placing on the experience. And so the thing about emotions as well is they're on a spectrum. It's like a pendulum. We have really high charge positive emotions and low charged heavy negative emotions. Either which one is neither right or wrong. They just are. The objective is to understand where you are on that pendulum so you can come back to neutral, the middle ground where all information exists. Because if we're on one end of the spectrum or the other, good or bad, high, low, negative, positive, we are filtering out 50% of reality. The thing is, we live in a duality of life as a human experiencing life. So when we're in a high positive state, we're filtering out all the negatives, all the drawbacks. When we're in a low negative state, we're filtering out all the positives, all the upsides, all the potential. So the goal here is to get back to neutral, which is a way of hacking hindsight. We can ask ourselves, okay, what is the potential drawbacks of being in this high charged positive state? What am I not seeing? What potential harm is there from moving forward in this state? On the flip side, if we're in a low negative state, what are the skills, knowledge, and experience that I'm going to gain from being in this moment that I didn't have before that are going to help me become smarter, stronger, more efficient, more effective, perform at a higher level moving forward. Either which way, it brings us back to neutral because that's where 100% of information is. When we get stuck in these emotional states, it's like the same thing of how alcohol can take over and become intoxicating. Emotions can become intoxicating and addictive because if you've grown up in an environment like I did where it was very stressful and a lot of threat and you're just living under chronic stress and fear, it was challenging for me to know what it felt like to be regulated, to be in a neutral state, not always trying to perform or achieve or to get away from threats that I didn't know I was doing. So a lot of us have a hard time understanding where we are and what is actually neutral because our baseline is so highly activated and stressful that when we are not in a stressful environment, we self-sabotage because that's what we know. Emotions are the same thing. It's why people can get addicted to emotions because it's familiar. It's the known space that they know to exist that's a part of who they are, who they believe they are, which that's another video coming in the future is how powerful beliefs are. Emotions are just as powerful and intoxicating as alcohol and other drugs, depending on the person, the experience, the genetics, all that, of course, but it's the same thing. So a great way to paint this picture is if you have one drink, that's probably not going to do too much damage. But if you have 10 drinks, that's going to create a level of dysfunction and distort your reality to where people say, hey man, I think you've had too many. And you're like, oh, I'm good. I'm not drunk. And then people are like, no, you're pretty drunk. Like you can't even see reality. Same thing with emotions. If we're, if you can think of a time where you woke up hungover and you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that or said that thing. Think about times where the next day you're back to baseline, you're not activated anymore, and you maybe can reflect on the day before where you did something or said something out of anger and spite that you're not proud of now, and maybe it caused more problems. That's the whole point about getting back to neutral. It's not to say emotions are negative or positive. They just are. They're incoming information of signals to our body and our mind from the external environment and how we're perceiving the external environment internally. They're neither good or bad. They're important. We need both of them. We live in a duality. The objective is to get back to neutral, not to suppress or avoid, to sit with. And that way we can ask ourselves, okay, what is there to learn from this moment right now? What I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what I'm thinking because of the feelings and experiences, what is there to gain from this? That way I can make a decision moving forward that's not going to cause me more problems down the line. It's not going to have more negative implications. It's going to have a higher probability of creating more positive experiences and implications. Now, this leads to the third step, which is manage the meaning by choosing the frame. This is how you hack hindsight. This is, what I mentioned earlier about, what are the potential drawbacks of being in this highly positive state, or what are the benefits of being in this low state, maybe this failure state or this sickness, whatever it is. What can I learn from this? What can I gain from this? So when we think about frame choice, we can place a frame on something and label it as good or bad. Depends on the choice of how we're perceiving it and how we choose to perceive it. Something like stress, which people have a meaning applied, the frame they apply to stress is it's bad, it's harmful, it's dangerous, I don't want it. So then they avoid all the stressful experiences, and when they feel stress, they run from it. Now, someone like myself has conditioned my mind and my psychology to look at stressful events as ones that help me grow and adapt. It's by design to become better, to learn. So when I place a frame on stressful situations, I know it's part design to get me to level up in my life or whatever area and thing I'm working on. And so when we can choose the frame, we can manage the meaning. And when we can manage the meaning, we manage our performance. And so these 3 steps are a super fundamental but profound and powerful approach to managing stress in our lives while creating more visibility. So that way we have a higher chance of achieving the things we want. Because again, people that have a higher visibility have a higher potential of achieving what they want. People that can see more, they tend to win more in life. So the objective here is to manage your relationship with the external world, including people, places, things, and experience. And more importantly, manage your relationship with stress coming from people, places, things, and experiences. It's up to you to choose how you respond, living in an empowered state, owning what's going on in your mind and body and how you want to choose to move forward rather than placing blame on other people, events, things, situations, circumstances. The question is, can you be empowered to move forward in life despite your circumstances based on how you choose to define yourself on the vision you have for your life rather than your external circumstances? So if this video resonated, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read all the comments. Comment below. Let me know what you think. Let me know where you maybe need to take some more ownership, where you are maybe overwhelmed and experiencing the stress, and what is one thing that this video helped you see that you can apply, you can take action on, because none of this matters unless you do something with it. And that's the hard truth about life in general. You can learn all you want, but unless you embody it by integrating it with action, it's not going to change your life. So if you want your life to change, you have to change first. It's cliche because it's true. Those who get to the higher levels of life that we deem as extraordinary or inspired by, they know this. It's become a part of who they are. It's my hope that you take this information and you apply it so that you can shift your psychology, therefore you shift your identity, and the results you experience are a manifestation of how you choose to show up differently.